Welcome to the Explainer. So let's jump right in with a pretty wild idea. What if the one thing you're chasing, happiness, is the very thing that's making you miserable? We're going to look at why the constant pursuit of joy might actually be sabotaging your mental health.
I mean, just look at this quote. It seems completely backward, right? This idea from some really interesting recent research, it really sets the stage for everything we're going to talk about. How could wanting to be happy, something that feels so fundamental, actually be a bad thing? And that's the big question, isn't it? It feels like the most natural goal in the world. But it turns out the answer is way more complicated than you might think. It's not that happiness itself is bad, but the way we often go about chasing it, well, that's where the problems start. Okay, so let's get into it, because this is what researchers call the happiness trap. And it's this fascinating paradox where making happiness your number one goal often means you're less likely to ever actually feel it.
So, why does this happen? Well, there are a couple of big reasons. First up, there's something called the monitoring effect. You're so busy constantly asking yourself, am I happy yet? How about now? Is this making me happy? That you completely pull yourself out of the actual experience. And then there's this other thing called experiential avoidance. When happiness is the only acceptable feeling, then any negative emotion, sadness, anxiety, frustration, it feels like a personal failure. So what do? You start shrinking your life to avoid those feelings. Maybe you don't go for that job interview because you're scared of rejection, or you avoid that tough conversation. Your whole world gets smaller.
Right. So if that's the trap, what's the way out? This brings us to a much more powerful, science-backed way to think about our mental well-being. It's a huge shift from chasing a feeling to building a skill.
And this is where we get to the good stuff. The new goal isn't happiness itself. It's something called psychological flexibility. And this is a much more solid foundation to build your mental health on. So what is it exactly? Well, this is the core idea. It's not about feeling good all the time or trying to get rid of all your uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. It's the exact opposite. It's about making room for the full, messy range of human experience and still moving towards what truly matters to you. It's about learning to carry the tough stuff with you, not waiting for it to disappear before you can live your life. And this is such a huge shift in how we think about this, right? We treat happiness like an outcome. It's this destination you're trying to reach, but it totally depends on everything going perfectly. But psychological flexibility, that's a process. It's a set of skills you can practice and get better at no matter what life is throwing at you. One is a finish line you might never reach. The other is how you navigate the entire journey. I love this metaphor because it just makes so much sense. In a storm, the rigid, unbending tree is the one that's going to snap in half. But the flexible tree, it bends with the wind, it weathers the storm, and it's still standing when the sun comes out. The goal isn't to avoid storms. It's to be the kind of tree that can survive them.
Okay, so this sounds good in theory, but is there any actual science to back it up? You bet there is. This isn't just some nice-sounding idea. Research shows that psychological flexibility is the actual pathway to better mental health.
So, a recent study looked at people who are under a lot of stress, and they found this really interesting connection. We all have some level of resilience, right? That's our basic ability to adapt. But psychological flexibility, that's the active ingredient. It's the how. It's the mechanism that lets you actually use that resilience in a tough moment. And that's what leads to better mental health. So what this quote is really saying is that flexibility is the linchpin. It's the crucial bridge. In other words, you can be tough as nails, you can be really resilient, but if you're not flexible, that resilience doesn't actually translate into better mental well-being. Flexibility is the key that unlocks it.
So if this is the goal, how do you actually do it? How do you build this skill? Well, thankfully, it's not just some vague idea. It actually breaks down into 6 clear, concrete skills that you can practice and strengthen over time. These 6 skills are known as the hexaflex model, and they all work together, kind of like gears in a machine. You've got acceptance, which is just making room for tough feelings instead of wrestling with them. Then there's cognitive diffusion, which is a cool way of saying you learn to step back from your thoughts. You have connecting with the present moment, figuring out your core values, and then putting it all into practice through committed action. Each one supports the others.
All right, let's get really practical. How can you start using this stuff today? Well, the great news is you might already be doing some things that can help. We just need to reframe why we're doing them. And this is what's so cool about this approach. We don't have to throw out all these familiar techniques. We just use them with a different goal.
So instead of using positive affirmations to force yourself to feel good, you can use them as a way to just notice how your mind creates stories. That's a cognitive diffusion skill. A gratitude journal isn't about trying to feel grateful. It's a way to practice being in the present moment, to just notice what's already here. And volunteering? That is a perfect example of committed action, living your values out in the real world. This is such a simple but honestly game-changing trick. It comes right from that skill of cognitive diffusion. When you just add that little phrase, I'm having the thought that, you create a little bit of space. You unhook from the thought. It's no longer a fact about you. It's just a bunch of words your brain produced. And that takes away so much of its power.
And that really brings us to the heart of it all. Your life's goal fundamentally shifts. You go from being tossed around by the waves, constantly trying to feel good, to becoming the captain of your own ship, steering by the compass of your own values. It's about living a meaningful life, even when the seas are rough, not just waiting for the storm to pass. So we'll leave you with this question because it captures this entire shift we've been talking about. It moves the focus away from a temporary, fleeting feeling and toward a deep, personal, and powerful sense of purpose. And that, according to the science, is not only a more meaningful path, it's a much more resilient one too.